Hey everybody, Nick back for a little bit more coverage from NAB 2024. And this video is the one I'm probably the most excited about. When I went to NAB, I was excited to see everything there, but I kind of was on a mission to research lenses, focusing tools, and power solutions, like I mentioned in the last video. And the booth I most wanted to visit, far and away, was the Atlas lens booth. I'm fascinated by their lenses, what they do, what they can offer, how they're developing them. And I especially was curious about a couple of technical aspects of the lenses that I really wanted to get my hands on to test in person. A couple of things specifically to get really detailed with it. I wanted to know what sort of the total look and resolution was like using the Orion's Super 35 lenses, but in 1x1 mode on the V-Raptor, which has a 21mm tall sensor. So using a 21x21 section of the V-Raptor X sensor and the Orion lenses, you de-squeeze to a 2:1, which is a really beautiful ratio that I love, and you're utilizing almost the entirety of the Orion's image circle. The 31mm image circle of the Orion basically just perfectly circumscribes a 21x21mm square. So I was very curious what that looks like and how that type of setup compared to just using the Mercury lenses sort of as advertised as full frame 1.5s, which will cover the entirety of the V-Raptor's 41x21mm sensor and stretch to 1.5. which makes kind of a crazy aspect ratio if you just use the whole thing. That ends up being, what, 23.5x9, which is a really wide sort of thing. Is that right? 17 plus 8.5, 25.5x9, which is, you know, like 2.6 to 1. It's really wide, 2.8 to 1, somewhere in there. Anyway, I was really curious about those certain technical aspects of the lens. Anyway, I was really curious about those technical aspects of the lenses and sort of what it felt like to look through the camera and see those. Obviously, I wasn't going to be able to do anything really in depth. I wasn't able to, take them away for a night and come back. It was just really testing them right there on the showroom floor in a very uncontrolled environment. But I did get some fun sample footage. I did get a start to the answers of some of my questions. And more than that, I just really fell in love with those lenses. I love the Orions even more than I thought I was going to. I really love the Mercuries, and I really, really, really love the company and the people behind it and their philosophy about things. I had the opportunity to sit down with Dan Keynes, co-founder of Atlas Lens Co., and just talk with him about his philosophy of design, his ideas about lenses, his passion for the craft. It's in some ways somewhat technical of an interview, but really it's a very non-technical, very interesting interview in my opinion. And he talks at the beginning about something that matters a lot to me, which is that he says very clearly, the end-all and be-all of your image is light. Photography is literally the recording of light. So I have a couple of lights here, right? Those little rainbow things going off in the back. And then I have one light that's just pointed at me right now. And hey, if we turn it this way, we get a totally different look of like a little bit more even lighting. Or we can go way to the side and have a much darker sort of look. I sort of landed over here with this sort of 3/4 Rembrandt thing. We could change how it's tilted to have it really coming down from on top of me or down from below for a totally different look. I mean, this is one light. I turn this thing off, you got nothing, right? So here's an example. I bet that when we go from this setup to this one, the only thing your eye really picks out is the change in lighting. It's the same angle, same focal length. I'm betting you didn't notice that there is a $30,000 difference in the camera setups used. All your eye can really pick out is how different the lighting is. attention to detail on lighting is going to get you a lot farther than the number of dollars you spend on your lenses. But having said that, I really did fall in love with the Atlas lenses. I love what they do. I love how looking through them basically just turns the world into a movie. I know it's cliche, I know others have said it, but something about the technical elements between the barrel distortion, the lens flares, the oval bokeh, the focus fall off and field curvature, it just sings in a certain way that immediately tells the viewer, you are not looking at base reality here. You're looking at some kind of altered, heightened, different reality. And I just love how they look. I really hope to be able to shoot on these lenses one day. I really hope to see a version of the Mercuries with blue flare, which is just kind of like just a part of my childhood psyche that I like blue flares the best. I'm a child of science fiction. I talked to Dan about that after we stopped rolling the cameras. We ended up talking about J.J. Abrams and Star Trek 2009, and he said watching that movie with his wife was one of the most memorable romantic nights of his life. And I totally resonate with that. I totally get it. And I don't know the circumstances of his particular evening, but I know how that movie made me feel. And those lenses, Atlas Mercury, Atlas Orion lenses, they are connected to that feeling for me. So I really enjoyed my time. Dan, thank you so much for being so candid with me and for taking the time out. And I really hope one day to be able to shoot with your fantastic equipment. So without further ado, here is Dan Keynes and the Atlas Lens Company. I am here with the legendary Dan Keynes of Atlas Co. Dan, you started this company with Forrest Schultz back in 2017, 2016. So you're coming up on like 8 years or so?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, but yes.
Yeah. And so your history before that was very much in cinematography. So I guess for the past years, there's probably a lot less of that and a lot more of the business side.
It's true. I mean, I have dabbled in a lot of things, as I would encourage many people to explore their possibilities. So over 20 years ago, I started in lighting. So I was doing set lighting as a lighting technician because I wanted to become a cinematographer. And to me, lighting is the end-all be-all at the beginning of making great images. So I started in set lighting as a member of Local 728. I transitioned into becoming a digital imaging technician and focusing on digital workflow and on-set lab work, basically, like processing digital images. And then I became a cinematographer in Local 600, shooting commercials, music videos, title sequences, and limited narrative work, some feature films, but not great ones. Great films for the filmmakers, but not like anything you've ever heard of, probably. And then in the course of my cinematography work, I uncovered the need for a wireless HD transmitter and built a company called Paralinx from my garage, and then evolved that into a pretty successful HD transmitter company that I sold to the Vitech Group in 2015. And after exiting that, I was like, what do I really want to do? And so I was still shooting things that whole time. But I also had discovered how much I really love making products for people like myself, because if you're using the products, you have a greater understanding of how they might be beneficial to people or what we might be missing. And when the movie Punch Drunk Love came out in theaters, when I was still a lighting technician, that movie inspired me to uncover why anamorphic lenses exist, because of the beautiful cinematography of Robert Elswood ASC, and found out they were using Panavision E-series and G-series mostly. And I said, well, what is that? And why did they use those lenses? What does that even mean? Yeah. And that sent me on a quest of discovery. So the 20 years following that, every day I would basically read up as much as I could about lenses and imaging, and I'm always trying to learn as much as I can. So if a day goes by and I'm not learning something new, it doesn't feel like I've really lived to my best life.
Yeah, I totally empathize with that idea of being on a journey of seeing these lenses and being like, what is this? I I've heard the word anamorphic before, but had no idea what's the difference between a C series and a T series and a G series, and going down that path. And I also absolutely love what you said at the beginning, which is that the beginning and the end of photography is light. It's literally what it is. It is a recording of light. And so that's the top and the bottom of it, which is really cool to hear a lens manufacturer say that the most important thing is lighting, which is true. But that quest to sort of say, how do I want to record this, is such a big part of so many people's journeys through this process. And so right now what I'm doing is shooting a feature film, and I've just been recording and documenting pieces of the process throughout. As part of my journey through discovering lenses and diving so deep into all things anamorphic and spherical and modern and vintage, of course I came across Atlas, and there's so much I love about the Orion series and the Mercury series and what they offer. And it's so interesting about your booth here. One of the first things I noticed, and I told my wife, was like, these demo shots they have, where they have a couple cameras set up that are, definitely constructed with some care, but are in the middle of an uncontrollable environment, still just look absolutely beautiful and like you're looking at a finished film. And I've heard several people walk up to the booth and go, wow, those monitors monitoring these live cameras look like a finished film. And so I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy behind lens design, because I understand the technical aspects, right? Which ones have bokeh shaped this way versus that way, what the squeeze factors are, that the Mercuries are a little more well corrected, and so there's less of a, coma shape around the hard edge around the book. Like all these things, I understand the technical aspects. What I don't understand is how those translate into a feeling, and how you approach that as a lens designer and a lens company is, because I look at these and I have a particular feeling that I don't have, for other comparable products. And so I wonder how you think about that, because a lens is, in some sense, it is a collection of technical aspects. But at the end of the day, the image it produces is not. And how do you think about that dichotomy and that sort of conflict of ideas?
I like the notion of a dichotomy, and it's a dialectic conversation. So first of all, I would be remiss to say that I'm here alone doing this, because so much of what we do is absolutely super collaborative and requires not only great product thinking and design thinking, but great engineering, great manufacturing processes, great marketing. And so it's really about the way that our team works together. And if the team is not working together, it's much harder to achieve excellent products. So it starts with a script in a way. Product design is like filmmaking, in that you start with a layout for what you think is going to happen. And then along the road, you have to be adaptable and realize that there will be either challenges or discoveries. Sometimes those can be both. The same thing can be both. And those are opportunities that allow us to really discover the best possible product, or where we're just going absolutely wrong. And I wake up each day excited to meet those challenges and discoveries. It's a quest, right? So in essence, what we do is we start by making sure that the team is able to communicate well. The second thing that we do is lay out our vision for what we think might make a nice product, and then circle around that a few times just in design thinking principles. And then from those design principle documents, we can start going to the engineering process, where we start laying up what we think might make that work in terms of the results that we want. So if we want a lens with full frame coverage, with a certain light transmission, and we're trying to make it weigh a certain weight, we start out with those goals in the engineering process and then start laying up models and simulating things. As we're simulating, if we discover that, for instance, to make it a T2 transmission, the front element is going to have to be 100 millimeters in diameter. That's pretty big. And if it's a Mercury lens, if it's 100 millimeters in diameter, that's bigger than the target dimensioning of the lens, which is meant to fit in a 95 millimeter package. So in that design document, we'll try to lay up all the goals and aspirations and the feelings, like that's important, the emotional feelings that we hope the lens conveys. And that can't always be 100% specific, but it can be notional. So you want to have sort of a framework for goalposts of like, is this within these two goalposts? And so it's like pushing on a balloon, as I'm sure you know, you've been through product design.
Oh, sure.
You're pushing on the balloon always, and sometimes you smush it down here and it pops up over here. But ultimately you want to keep polishing that concept in the simulation phase before you actually get to cutting glass and metal. The more you can polish it in the simulation process, the more likely you're going to have a near perfect success first try. Rare that you get a perfect outcome the first try, but you do your best to make a good prototype, and digital prototyping in simulation is really a great thing. So we're very fortunate in, olden times, you'd have a slide rule and you'd be running calculations, and I don't think they were doing emotion-driven optical design back in the day. They were doing more perfection-driven optical design, where it's like, we know that these, and by the way, this is a fun fact, the way that they would analyze the light, it all comes back to light. The spectrum of light, or the spectra, they would use what's called Mercury lines, because they could measure the lines of transmission of color wavelengths by a Mercury.
Because you're trying to make them all converge. Right?
You wanted to converge at the same point, and Mercury vapor would be the closest to a daylight light. So those Mercury lines are sort of a known quantity, is measurable and calculatable with primitive technology compared to what we have now in terms of spectrometry and analysis of those quantifiable visual wavelengths. So, the human visual wavelength is basically what we're targeting for, in a sense. So, Scott DeWald, who's one of our chief optical engineers here, he was responsible for developing the DCI P3 color gamut that we all experience on a daily basis, which is nuts. That one of those super influential people in the way that we experience digital imaging is now part of our team here. So I'm really grateful to Scott and to Forrest, of course, and to all of our engineers and our production team here. So it's really interesting how these things come full circle. So if digital cinema in the theater space for projection wasn't invented, Scott wouldn't have learned anything about lens design. He was from Texas Instruments, where they developed the DLP chip. So digital light projection, digital laser projection. So they use micromirror arrays to shape light and create projection. And he had to learn how to develop anamorphic lenses for that, because they wanted to deliver CinemaScope movies, but the DLP chips are square. So that led to film anamorphic lenses being decommissioned and going on the second-hand market, and that's, in a way, the inception of both Forrest and my first experience using anamorphic lenses by hacking projector lenses together with regular camera lenses.
Like the Kawa B&H on top of like a Canon FD50 with
That was our first way of both experiencing anamorphic in a way that we couldn't afford, Lomo anamorphic lenses or
and to this day
lens.
That's still the only way to get that kind of flare, short of a very short list of modern available lenses, on which Atlas is on that list. It's like you and Zelmus and like sometimes the Kawas, depending on the flare you're getting, but like, or you have to hack together a front projection lens and put it on top of an old vintage 50 or whatever it will cover and go from there. I've heard of lens design described as like trying to find the lowest point in a valley while blindfolded, but with a walking stick. So you just kind of poke around, and even in the modern digital realm, you can run so many more simulations, but you're still trying to find sort of that lowest point in the valley where you'll achieve your design constraints, in a way that doesn't require you to have 120 millimeter front element, or, something so large to control vignetting or whatever it is that you're trying to constrain
well
for.
Said. Well said.
Thank you. But it's just been an absolute pleasure to get to play with some of these lenses today.
Thank you.
As a person who ultimately does creative work, you're trying to find something that gives you that feeling that you're looking for. And it is such a technical craft that having those two things hand in hand, I think, is a tough nut to crack for a lot of people.
I'd love to give some inspiration to everyone out there. First of all, I want to say no matter who you are, where you are, every journey begins with one small step. That's something I took from Robert Maurer, PhD, who's a practitioner of an ancient concept called Kaizen. Kaizen is just the process of taking small steps to improve things. And we can practice that in our daily lives, whether you're making breakfast or taking care of your family or going on a jog to try to get healthier. So I just want to give everyone out there peace of mind to know that in a world that seems like it's uncontrollable and uncertain, you can take small steps. It doesn't mean you're going to have a giant victory immediately, but every step will put you closer to your goal, even if there's some setbacks. So keep stepping forward, keep pushing things. Don't push yourself too hard, because if you do, it makes it harder to continue that next day. So small steps, one after the other, will add up to a huge achievement over time. And that's really something that we believe in, something we practice here as a team. And I practice it in my daily life, and I'm grateful to the people who came before me who discovered that concept of Kaizen. And you can practice all these concepts no matter what you're doing. Filmmaking is like prototyping. So you start with the script, which is your blueprint for the perfect film. You show up and you know it's very difficult to achieve something, so you try, but you find out it's not working. Every take is a prototype of the perfect take. And then sometimes you go too far and the take that you did before the last take was better. That's okay. You can go back to that step. You have it recorded. And
they say a film is made 3 times.
Keep iterating. Right?
Writing, producing, and then editing, basically. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful concept. And I know that, like myself, who is so grateful that Atlas Lens coexists, there are so many people out there that are grateful for what you're doing, how you're pushing this craft forward and making these ideas and these lenses more available to more people.
It's really an honor. It's a joy.
It's a joy for us as well. Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. You guys do absolutely phenomenal work, and it's been great chatting with you, Dan.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right.
Great to have you.
For more, everybody check out atlaslensco.com. Thank you. Okay, so that was the interview. What do you guys think? I was just blown away again by not only the equipment, but the people behind it. And I hope to go out to Glendale to visit the Atlas folks again in the future. And I really hope to be able to use their lenses at some point on a future project, or even for the project I'm currently working on. I'm not sure if it'll happen, if it's in the works, but thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for watching this video. And like Dan said, just improve a little bit each day. We're all on a different journey, and if you can just remember to take one step at a time, you can go a very great distance indeed. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.